be careful not to over extrapolate everything you see happening around you at the moment. The speed of interest rate rises, the speed and extent of falls in asset prices, such as for shares, such as for crypto assets, such as for houses as well. Well, hello again, everybody. In the interest rate markets, things have got fairly interesting recently, not just with the rapid tightening of monetary policy in New Zealand, but also the way that things have really kicked into gear in the United States. The Federal Reserve just increased their main interest rate by 0.75%, something they haven't done for a very long period of time. We've also seen increases coming in the past week or so from the Bank of England and the Bank of Switzerland as well. And in essence, what's happening around the world is that central banks, having overstimulated their economies, thrown printed money at them, slashed interest rates, they kept these things too loose, too easy and too stimulatory for too long through 2021 into early this year, and now they are very much in catch-up mode, where they're looking to get interest rates away from these stimulatory levels as quickly as humanly possible. I think if the Fed thought they could have got away with a 1 or a 1.5% increase in interest rates without really scaring the horses, they would have done it. But of course, the fear is now out there, and we've seen our share prices falling away tremendously, and now that interest rates are slightly rising, people are starting to question what actually is the worth of crypto assets. Well, they're only worth what somebody else thinks they're worth because they think somebody else thinks they're worth something. Essentially, the whole pyramid scheme is starting to unwind there, and we've seen some fairly substantial falls in crypto asset prices as well. People are running a little bit scared at the moment, but I guess the key thing that I'm interested in is not so much how does this translate into the outlook for world growth. Well, I mean, it's negative, but the fact that everything is being compressed in time. The interest rate rises that in New Zealand we thought might run through to the middle of 2024, the Reserve Bank has told us they're going to have this done and dusted by the middle of 2023. We see the bringing in of those timings overseas for monetary policy interest rate rises as well, also being brought into a shorter period of time. Everything's accelerating, and I think maybe we're seeing the same thing when it comes to the New Zealand housing market. We got the data from REINZ last week, their house price index. This is a measure which adjusts for changes in the mix of houses sold from one month to another. It fell by 1.6% again, second month in a row in May, and on average New Zealand house prices have fallen 7.7% since November, so that makes for a 6-month period. Now obviously that's a fairly rapid rate of decline, not as fast as the pace with which house prices were rising over the mid-2020 through to late 2021 period, but definitely there is some acceleration going on there as well. And I guess my advice over all of this is be careful not to over extrapolate everything you see happening around you at the moment. The speed of interest rate rises, the speed and extent of falls in asset prices, such as for shares, such as for crypto assets, such as for houses as well. Everything is really being condensed in time because the central banks are scrambling because they are so far behind the curve. Now, they would have been able to gradually raise interest rates over a reasonable period of time and not scare the bejeebers out of everybody if it wasn't for the fact that we've had these extra upward pressures on inflation coming from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, pushing up international food and energy prices in particular, and China's continued pursuit of a zero COVID strategy, which of course is still radically interrupting the supply chains, the materials costs, stuff imported into New Zealand and around the world, etc. So basically, bit of bad luck for the central banks. They thought they had time on their side. They do not. It's a mad scramble. Just be careful not to over extrapolate what you're seeing happening over the past few months and maybe the next few months as well. And I think especially for your first home buyers out there, a lot of you haven't maybe seen a really sharp downturn in asset markets before. These things can come along. They happen, every now and then. This one is particularly brutal, but of course, the more that we get the asset prices down, eventually the more inflation gets suppressed, and the greater the chance we actually see mortgage interest rates falling in New Zealand through 2023 and over 2023-4 as well. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about when to re-engage with the market and have a look for that first home purchase. All the best out there.